latter, the story we've all been waiting for over at ESPN. Lengthy, detailed, well reported, and including pretty divisive and pretty disappointing and startling allegations against Suns managing partner Robert Sarver, dating back the entirety of his tenure, anecdotes from the beginning, from the middle, from the end, from the most recent portion of his time as owner. This is not old news. This is very current. I'll get into my general thoughts and reaction, what we are looking at, what the fallout is so far, and what we might see next. Did just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On Suns is brought to you by McDonald's, which has been proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. Okay, 9 o'clock this morning, Suns time. The piece drops, hinges on a leading anecdote from Earl Watson, whose voice is prominently featured throughout the story, starting with Robert Sarver's use of the N-word in private with Earl Watson, allegations that he used the word, that he frequently used the word, and that he did not back down from using the word. Robert Sarver denies this. This is the pattern of the piece. Stories, some off the record, most off the record, some on the record, and categorical denials by Robert Sarver outside of a few choice moments where he did not choose to refute what is in this story. And you go throughout. Allegations of mistreatment and off-color language toward people of color in the organization, toward women in the organization, outright sexual harassment, outright hateful speech, and ending with this section where you have another parade of voices coming to Robert Sarver's defense. The Suns, Jason Rowley and Sarver himself issued another round of denials today. You also had Monty Williams saying that he will wait to see what the NBA's investigation entails. Chris Paul and Devin Booker both echoing that. And the Suns have basically made Earl Watson and his credibility core to their argument against why this piece should be taken seriously. So that is where we are. As I said, there is an investigation, which Monty, Chris, and Devin all said that they will wait for the results of until they let us know more. Devin said that he did not expect any of this, that he's not seen things like this during his 7 years here. Monty Williams said that if he had known these things to be happening during his time here, he would not be sitting in the coach's seat. We'll get into all of that stuff as we go on here, but I want to keep the same tune that I've had with you guys the entire time that we've been waiting for this, which is, as I said from day one, the core of this story, the core of this moment in time as we look at the Suns organization in a new way, the core of it is the people, many of whom came at least on background and were able to share the stories of their complete misery in a lot of cases. You have people like Corliss Williamson and Earl Watson and a former staffer, those three folks on the record about their experiences. That is who is at the most detriment tonight. It's not Suns fans, it's not Robert Sarver, and it's not anyone else in this organization. I do feel for many of the people who work for the Suns, because that's not something that they brought upon themselves, this PR nightmare, and it's also something that many of them may have been dealing with, and we just did not know the extent of it. But that is who is the victim here. That is who is at the core of this story. The sensationalization of it would lead you to believe that somebody like Robert Sarver is the victim, or that he is the centerpiece to this story. And while his future as owner may be in doubt and the NBA's investigation may take him down, the story is about people in this organization, dozens of them, 70 people interviewed for it, and countless more who we know have been touched, some of whom I've spoken with, that can at least verify the legitimacy of some of these claims, if not the stories outright themselves. You've been hearing moments and notes like that from folks like Amin Al Hassan in the media and Greg Esposito, Espo, talking about the lack of surprise when this stuff comes out. I think that the sensationalization is not helpful, but the people at the core of this are the ones that are the victims. And more broadly than that, because that I think should be obvious to anybody who reads this, that that's what you're looking at, is the people who dealt with this and who were in some cases driven to suicidal thoughts, to needing therapy. In the case of Earl Watson, um, left the league for many years in the early days of his coaching career. But more broadly than that, you're looking at a situation where the Suns have made. I mentioned Earl Watson and his credibility is one of the main ways that they're denying this story. That Sarver and Rowley in particular have gone about denying the contents of Baxter Holmes' reporting in this ESPN story. But beyond that, the other thing that you're seeing them do is to accuse Holmes and accuse ESPN of creating a narrative and backing this story into it. What I mean by that is reading between the lines that there is a narrative of allegations like these: racism, misogyny, sexism, sexual harassment, that are going throughout sports. And the accusation, pretty clearly by Sarver and Rowley and the Suns, is that Holmes came to this reporting project with that in mind and attempted to retrofit the contents of the stories that he's telling within this report into that narrative. And whether that's true or not, I don't know why or how Baxter Holmes reported this piece, and we never will. That's not likely to ever be talked about. That's not how these things work. Regardless of it, though, the question we should be asking ourselves is not whether that is what Baxter Holmes did, or whether it's part of why the reaction to Robert Sarver and the allegations in this story have been framed the way that they've been, why we feel the way that we might feel about this story. The question we should be asking instead is, why does that narrative already exist? Because whether the Suns like it or not, this story is part of that narrative. It's part of a complete revolution, a complete 180 in the way that we look at sports and sports leadership in this moment. It's been dating back to last year with folks like Bubba Wallace, with folks like, I mean, list the name. There are too many to count. Kelly Loeffler, the Atlanta Dream co-owner. There are numerous counts, and more recently, John Gruden, the National Women's Soccer League executives and team leadership, and of course, the Chicago Blackhawks and the scandal that is rippled throughout the NHL. Those are not one-offs. Those are not random, and it's not a false narrative. It is something that we all ought to be thinking about. If we take the victims and the victimhood of these folks who talked with Baxter Holmes for this piece seriously, as I do and as you should, then we should be thinking about why it is that these people have become the leaders of the teams that we invest so much time and energy into. The system and the ecosystem and the infrastructure that is our sports world here in America that has allowed these people to rule it and allow these people to continue to rule it and to go unchecked in their behavior in such a way that a thing like this could be painted as a narrative. It's only a narrative because it truly fits a pattern. These things are not one-off. 70 people do not lie in unison to fit a narrative. These things are true. These things are part of a pattern across sports that we should be taking seriously and we should be looking at collectively. So that is where I am coming at this from. I understand the patience on the part of Monty Williams, of James Jones, of Chris Paul, of Devin Booker, of any of you listening who feel like we ought to give everybody the time to speak their piece and to have things go through the correct jurisprudence and due diligence and due process that we all are owed. But that doesn't stop us from being appalled and giving a critical eye toward what is being alleged. And the things that are being alleged are disgusting and in and of themselves merit a reconsideration of whether Robert Sarver is fit to own and run an NBA team.